thanks so much for all of you that are new and those of you who have stayed through the entire morning. All right, we're on the home stretch now, so thank you very much. Again, it's the League of Women Voters of the Palatine area presenting this forum. We have in Palatine, we take in Palatine, Schomburg, Rolling Meadows, Inverness, Barrington Hills, and Schomburg and Hoffman. So it's a wide area. This is our first forum in Schomburg in many, many years. So, you know, sit back and listen. We've got candidates, we've got forums. Thank you.
For those of you who just came in, my name is Vicki Martin and I'm the chairman of today's forum. So I'm going to go over the format of the forum and the rules, both for the benefit of the newcomers in our audience and for our candidates. The candidates have drawn numbers to determine their speaking order, and the moderator will rotate this order during the forum so that everybody has a chance to speak first on a particular topic. We have lead members acting as timers. The candidates will be given a 30-second and 15-second warning, so please, candidates, quickly compose your thoughts when you see the stop card. Time limits will be enforced out of respect for all the candidates. Questions will be provided initially by our moderator and then also from you, the audience. Most of you were given an index card and a pencil when you walked in, and we have league members in the aisles with more cards and pencils. So please contribute your thoughts to today's discussion. All of the questions from the audience will be vetted by a committee from the League of Women Voters for clarity, appropriateness, and to avoid duplication. Because we do have time limits on the forum, it may be that not every question is asked. So if you have what you feel is a particularly important question, I suggest that you turn it in as soon as possible. Candidates have been asked not to interrupt each other, and the moderator will repeat a question if need be. So if you need to hear the question a second time, feel free to ask. And the candidates should please speak directly to the audience. And we'd also like to remind you that please hold your microphone close to your mouth because we've got a pretty big crowd here and we want to hear everything that you have to say. Audience, please turn off all electronic devices. This forum will be taped for League of Women Voters use. We use it to educate the public. The videos will be posted on the League of Women Voters Palatine area website. The candidates have all agreed to this. We ask that you hold all your applause until the end of the forum, and please do not demonstrate in any way to show support or non-support for a candidate. We take great pains to appear to be as neutral as possible, and we want that viewpoint to be maintained here within the forum. There's space outside the room for the candidates to speak to supporters after the forum, and campaign literature is on a table outside the room. No voice, image, or any other material from the recording of this forum may be used by any of the candidates. It's strictly the property of the League of Women Voters to be used for voter education. I would also like to point out to all of you that we do have voter registration here at the forum. Renee, hold up your sign. She is the registrar extraordinaire, and most of our team members here within the League are also registrars. So if you're not a registered voter, please see one of us and we'll get you set up. And if you're interested in a voter registration event at a club or in your neighborhood or something, contact us because we can do that easily. Alrighty, so again, please be respectful of all the candidates and of your fellow audience members. And I'm now pleased to introduce our moderator for today's forum, Catherine Sawyer. Catherine is the Chief Advancement Officer for Oakton Community College and a League of Women Voters member.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for coming out to hear from our candidates today. As Vicki mentioned, I am a proud member of the League of Women Voters. In full disclosure, I am also a resident of the village of Palatine, so I do not vote in any of these elections and have asked to serve as an impartial moderator for today's discussion. This is our third and final forum, and this afternoon we'll hear from the candidates for the race for president of Village of Schomburg. The village president presides over the board of trustees, chairing village board meetings and committee of the whole meetings. The position is currently held by Mayor Al Larson, who has served as the village's president over the past 32 years and a total of 44 years on the village board. With us today and on the ballot in alphabetical order are Tom Daly, Nafis Rahman, and Matthew Stewart. The winner of April's election will serve a 4-year term. We'll start with introductory remarks. Candidates, you have 2 minutes to respond. And by draw order, we'll start with Mr. Stewart, please.
Thank you, and thank you everyone for being here on a rainy day, and thank you to the League of Women Voters for hosting us, as well as to my fellow candidates for being here today. My name is Matthew J. Stewart, and I've been born and raised in Schaumburg my whole life, and anyone who knows me knows that I've talked about running for village president since I was about 8 years old, and Village President Larson was first elected. So I know that I'm more than qualified, as well as capable enough to do it, so I figured why wait? I know other villages might have ladder systems where it's just handed to the next person in line, but I'm proud of the choice that we have before us as residents of Schaumburg here in this election, and I hope that my fellow candidates are proud of that democratic choice as well. My father was my citizenship in the Community Merit Badge Counselor on my way to earning the rank of Eagle Scout, and that gave me a deep passion for wanting to make a big difference as much as I can in the community that raised me to go on to earn my JD MBA. I've been involved locally because of a family network that instilled in me from a young age to be involved. I was raised with not 1 but 2 special needs siblings, so the access to mental health is always an issue close and dear to my heart. But I was also raised in a home where at the end of my dad's life, my mom was at first the major and then the sole breadwinner. And it gave me it made me highly sensitive to the need for equal pay for equal work, where I feel I can enforce policies at the village level for income equality, not just for village employees, but for those bidding to do projects with the village. I currently am proud to serve as the president on the Old Schaumburg Center Commission here in Schaumburg, as well as president of a nonprofit that I hope to speak more of later that serves the needs of the developmental disability community. And I now am feeling called to run and provide a choice on election day, so I want to get more involved directly in our community than the peripheral ways I've been in the past. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Rahman.
Good afternoon. I am Nafis Rahman. Thank you to the League of Women Voters for conducting this forum and all of you for attending it in this cold, rainy weather. I lived in Schaumburg with my wife and 2 children for the past 23 years. I have a BA degree from DePaul University and an MBA from Lake Forest Graduate School of Management. I am running for the village president of Schaumburg because I have experience and understanding of both public and private sector. I currently am the Deputy Director in Accounting Revenue for the Illinois Secretary of State, and I manage $2.5 billion for Illinois Secretary of State. Previously, I was the CEO of the 3rd largest office supply manufacturing company, where I have turned companies around, broad efficiencies and leadership. I had the fiduciary responsibility where I grew the business 18% and efficiencies 29%. I built strong teams, relationships, which helped me drive the agenda forward. I am board member for several different non-for-profit organizations, such as Susie's Place. It's a shelter for battered women. Emergency Fund, who gives ham and turkey to the needy, and many other organizations. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Daly.
Since moving to Schaumburg 36 years ago, I have made it my goal to help my community become the best place to live, work, play, and raise a family. I didn't just decide I wanted to be mayor. I've been preparing for this for the last 30 years. It wasn't some dream, but a slow, steady process of learning what local government is all about and becoming educated on how local government works and making connections with other local officials and building relationships. I started out by volunteering to be on my homeowners association and then becoming appointed to numerous villages and committees, working my way up to the Zoning Board of Appeals before deciding to run for trustee years ago. Now I'm running for mayor because I believe with my 30 years of dedication and commitment, Schomburg needs a mayor that has the knowledge and experience and proven leadership to lead it into the future. As a leader with a proven track record of local government involvement, I will continue to work to reduce the tax burden on residents and businesses while continuing to provide a fiscally sound budget as proven by the village's AAA bond rating, the highest rating given out by Moody's and Poor's for the last 30 years. As proof, over the last 8 years, Schomburg has reduced the tax burden on its residents and businesses by 17%. No other community can make that claim. As mayor, I will continue that by reducing the village portion of our property taxes by another 5% in the first year. My priority is to continue to provide the safest environment for residents and businesses alike so that they can be comfortable knowing their investments are growing and that Schomburg is the place to be. In order for that to happen, Schomburg needs someone that is knowledgeable and experienced in how local government works, and I am the only candidate that comes to this table with that knowledge, experience, time, and proven commitment to do the job of mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we'll move on to questions. Audience members, if you have questions, please make sure that you pass them to the end of the aisle for collection. Candidates, you will have 1 minute to answer. We'll start with Mr. Rahman. And the first question is, what are the most important challenges facing the village of Schomburg in the next 4 years, and how do you propose to address them?
Thank you so much for the question. Again, the village is in $500 million debt, and the current management wants to add another $110 million in debt. These are the true numbers that were posted to Cook County. It's in the financials, and we have a plan to eliminate that. We have a plan to reduce that, and we will come up with a strategy, if elected president, to make that happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Daly.
The most important thing going on right now is the Motorola property. If you're unaware, that property actually is the size of downtown Chicago. It's tremendous, it's huge. It needs to be developed properly. We have a concept plan for it. It's very diverse in what its makeup's going to be, including some entertainment area. And so I think that's really important in how we go about getting that developed. I want to touch on this debt. It continues to come up as being an issue, all right? And I think it's very disingenuous and a scare tactic being used on residents, okay? Yes, the village of Schomburg has debt. It comes out of the audit statement April 30th, 2018, all right? We have 3 types of debt. We have mandated debt, which is pensions, things of that nature, accrued vacation, sick time. We have self-generated debt, which has got general obligation bonds, and then included in that was on that day was whatever payroll and payables were out there, which was a good $40 million. So it's really unfair to say that.
Thank you. Mr. Stewart.
I actually think that the most important thing to the village of Schaumburg is getting back to the residents and focusing on them. We focus often on the retail and the restaurant and the commercial districts, but we really need to take a look at our residents and the pride we have and the good residents we have, the good schools we have. What matters to the residents? Of course, they want us to lower their property taxes. And so that is one area that we need to continue to lower. We need to come up with innovative solutions to come up with ways in the 21st century to keep up with reduced sales tax being lost to internet sales. We also need to look at options such as not leaving anything off the table. Possibly, not saying we would, but looking into privatizing the convention center, if that's an option. One thing I would leave off the table, and I'm the only candidate who is against this, is video gaming, and I hope to discuss the reasons why a little more later. But that is the pulse that I'm hearing from the residents, and they're with me on that as well. So, thank you.
Thank you. Concerns about the village's debt load and operational expenses have come up in this race, with a proposal of a 5% across-the-board spending cut in all areas with the exception of fire and police. What information in the village's financial statements and reports would cause you to agree or disagree with this concern? And if you agree with expense reductions and that they're warranted, which services would you prioritize for cost cutting? Mr.
Well,
Day.
So the question comes down to 5%'s been raised, it's been talked about as $12.5 million. Not going to happen. To be real honest, just not going to happen. The budget, the general operating budget's $110 million. There's another $140 million in capital expenditures, projects, things of that nature. Police take $30 million. Fire is $25 million. Public Works is $15 million. And then you've got Water Fund, which is another $7 million. Where are you going to get your $12.5 million? You're going to have to severely slash programs, services, personnel in order to accomplish that. Part of the question becomes, why? Is there services? Is there something that's not going on? Is the village tremendously in debt? No. Going back to the debt question, no, we're not tremendously in debt. All the debt that we have has got a specific funding source, such as a sales tax or something else that is tied to that, might be a motel tax, that's paying that debt service. It's not coming out of general funds. It's not coming out of your property tax.
Thank you. Mr. Stewart.
I can actually tell us where to get $11 million worth of the 12.5, and that is from, in the 2018-19 budget, we are currently operating at an $11 million deficit. If we can just fiscally steward our finances better, we can have 11 million of it right there. I think one other area to look into when we're talking about specific cuts that can be made is I've looked at the village staffing issue, and we have had a lot of turnover in the rank and file membership of staff members, so they've been replaced by temporary or part-time workers, but there hasn't been as much turnover or attrition at the supervisor level, and we are top-heavy now. And so there are some departments where there's 12 people, but 3 supervisors, and so we need to look at all of these different areas to find the funds that we can cut, and as well as get innovative with new sources of revenue, such as creating and taxing more charging stations as we get ready for the 21st century, so that we can get out ahead of the state on this issue before they start thinking of the same. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Rahman.
When I was the CEO of the company, I've acquired many companies, and I've heard the same thing. Oh, we are running at the optimal budget. There's always a fat built in, and I have looked at it. I have cut the fat to achieve my goals. Secondly, our salary structure needs to be looked at, and we need to come up with a second-tier salary structure for the new members that we hire. There are several people in the police department, they're retiring. We need to really look at the salary structure for all. We need to improve our customer service to earn more businesses in Schaumburg and reduce the overall cost for the village.
Thank you. The next question will begin with Mr. Stewart. If elected village president, under what circumstances would you support the construction of a multi-level parking garage and/or performing arts center at the convention center complex?
I do agree that it does require better parking. I went to the Meekum Auto Auction there this past year, and it was atrocious, the busing situation and the way to get to the convention center. And so there's the definite need. One thing I disagree with is that parking structure will then be used for that downtown district. I've looked at the geographic realities of the situation. I don't see that many people parking there and then crossing past Zurich and down to the entertainment district. Therefore, I don't think it needs to be placed at the northwest corner of that property. I think it can be looked at to the south where the the Performing Arts Center was proposed for. I think we have sufficient performing arts in the village. I think surrounding areas that are struggling with their own performing arts centers are testament to what we can learn from other areas and what not to do and where to save our money and put the funds into that parking structure. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Rahman.
First of all, again, we need to pay down the debt. I think $500 million of huge debt before we invest another dime and save that money. The village has reported that parking demand exceeds supply at only 8 annual events at the convention center. The estimated annual payment on a 20-year, $33 million general obligation bond is 3.25%. That would be $2.2 $2,290,000, the 20-year payoff will be $45 million. There has been no financial study proven that the facility would generate enough income to pay an operate expense on the debt payment. The entertainment district will cost us $87 million. Lombard is in default on bond issue created by the entertainment complex. Nile is planning on 80-acre entertainment complex. The 4 convention entertainment facility in Rosemont barely clear a profit.
I'm afraid your time is up. Mr. Daly.
So I have an article here, Daily Herald, editorial. Even they agree that the garage is needed at the, to handle both the convention center and the entertainment area. It's already been pointed out, there's 8 events in particular that are overflow. They're having to bus people, have them park on the south side of the tollway and bus them over. We are on the verge of losing 2 of them. It will cost us millions of dollars to have those events go somewhere else. So we either build this to support what we've been striving for all these years, is to have a viable center, or we let it go and we lose business. Doesn't make any sense. The money for paying for this will come from part from the TIF district and part from money that's been set aside years ago when this was built to help build this, the whole area. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question will start with Mr. Rahman. Do you favor allowing video gaming within the village? And if so, what benefits and drawbacks will that bring to the community?
I think we seriously need to look at video gaming. I think we are about 5 years behind other suburbs, other neighboring suburbs that I see. It will bring, I believe, $1 million revenue to the bottom line of Schomburg. We have a concern of addiction, gambling. We need to have a controlled environment for putting those things together. We cannot just arbitrarily put those gambling machines everywhere, but we have to seriously consider looking to reduce down the debt. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Daly.
So I believe absolutely we need video gambling. We are losing potentially $1 million to surrounding communities. Hoffman Estates gets $485,000 that's generated from video gambling. Doesn't seem to have hurt Hoffman Estates in any way. Palatine's now doing it. Rolling Meadows, Arlington Heights. You name the community, they pretty much are doing it now. I think we are being disingenuous to our businesses by not doing it. We are hurting our own businesses by not allowing that. It's already very controlled. You can't have more than 5 machines at most in a place. So I think we should be doing that and looking for that as the revenue to help offset some of the other costs.
Thank you. Mr. Stewart.
As the youngest candidate up here, I am sorry to be the parent in the situation, but if your friends are jumping off the cliff, does that mean you have to jump off the cliff? I'm proud that Schomburg has not allowed video gaming in yet, and I want to keep it that way. I'm the only candidate, and this distinguishes me from them, that I am your only option if you want to keep video gaming out, and there's 2 main reasons. One, it doesn't ring true to me to boast about our retail and our restaurants and then say we need this. 2, it only gives 5% to the municipality. That means to get $1 million in the door, people have to lose $20 million. That's money they could be spending on the retail and restaurants. I don't want to take away from those sources. I want to keep video gaming out of Schomburg. Yes, it's working elsewhere, but let it work elsewhere. We should be creative enough to find other solutions to either cut expenses or increase revenues without bringing this in, and I know from speaking with residents that they're with me on this area. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question will start with Mr. Daly. Census information indicates that the population in the village is aging. What can the village do to ensure that there is enough housing supply and services to support an aging population?
So for new development, there really is only 2 places. One is Motorola property and the other one is District 211 property. We've been working with the developer of the 211 property to try and provide some cheaper housing, not low income, but cheaper housing on that development. Some of that's townhouses that have master bedrooms and master suites on the first floor, and yet provide some bedrooms upstairs for guests. The Motorola property is going to try and address that with some also some cheaper housing there. Beyond that, the village actually has quite a diverse housing population, I guess for lack of a correct term. There is a lot of places, if you look up on Zillow, you can see there's a lot of places that you can get places for $100,000, $150,000. The question is, do you want to live in a condo, a townhouse, or a house? If you're looking for a house, Schomburg's expensive. There is no if and ors or buts about it, can't hide it. But there is alternatives for people that want to move out of their house and still stay in Schaumburg.
Thank you. Mr. Stewart.
I do actually agree on this one because I think we do need more than just 2 new developments coming in. My own dear sweet mother was priced and aged out of Schaumburg in a way of sorts, and because of the lack of resources in this area. I think as we look at aging communities and flight through the state as well, we need to do a better job of advertising things like was mentioned in the last panel, District 54 being among the top 7% of schools. I know some people have looked at the options of lowering the transfer tax. Schaumburg's is actually relatively low compared to other districts or other areas in this community, the northwest suburbs. I've looked at that. Marketing the fact that it is relatively low could be something that we look at to do and bring more people in. But we also do need to better serve the aging community as the population there rises. And I look to explore more options to do so if elected. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Rahman.
Actually, I agree with both my candidates. Here's what we need to do. We need to not only look at that, but we need to bring new jobs and new talent in Schomburg. When you bring new jobs, you create the revenue. Lately, if you've noticed, there's a boom of IT. We need to bring IT into Schomburg. We need to, IT, the businesses pays a lot of money and they can afford that type of housing. Also, we need to help our seniors by looking at bringing the funding from the governor's office to help our seniors also. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question will start with Mr. Stewart. The village has aligned environmental planning with the Regional Greenest Region Compact 2 of 2016 and directives from the Go to 2040 plan. Are you familiar with the plan that is about to be adopted by the village board, and how will you support and accelerate its implementation?
I am familiar with the plan. I was actually there the night that they presented this, or may have watched that one on the video. I apologize if I wasn't there in actual physical attendance. I've been watching and attending different board meetings via the internet or in person. But I am familiar enough to know that I am encouraged by this, and I think it is a good thing going forward. I like long-term visions, especially for the 21st century, and coming up with innovative and new solutions, not forgetting about the environment and leaving that behind in our wake. I'm actually a little bummed about the District 211 property because that used to be in my backyard and was where we used to ride bikes as kids growing up. And so I wanted that to stay a green space forever. So I love green spaces and support them. I also am concerned with animal populations, skunks and coyotes and whatnot, and the humane repopulating of that into other areas as we run into human interaction with those, and looking at solutions for that as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Rahman.
I apologize, I'm not familiar with this, so I have very little knowledge of this project.
Thank you. Mr. Daly.
So I very much am in favor of anything we can do to help the environment in our green space. I've suggested that we should be doing more with solar. I was the one who helped push and promote doing the charging stations, and that the village should be doing more. We should not be restricting them and encouraging that to be happening. Actually, Woodfield took it on their own, and there's charging stations there, which is great. So I think we need to look at more of that. Mayor Larson has always been one, we call him the tree hugger, because heaven forbid you get someone who wants to take a tree out. He is just like all over it. So we are very much in tune with that. We've taken out 12,000 ash trees have been removed, and we're going to plant back that plus more over the next 10 years.
Thank you. Our next question will start with Mr. Rahman. The village has benefited from a broad tax base of retail, businesses, and residents who've chosen to locate here. As an interested partner in maintaining and growing all of these constituencies, what challenges
do these segments face, and how would you suggest the village be a good partner in addressing them?
So today I hear a lot of complaints from the businesses on a higher tax burden. Businesses, they want to leave Schomburg. I have talked to my friends. We need to reevaluate our tax structure for the businesses. I understand Schomburg brings a lot of revenue from the taxation, but we have to overall look at it, do an audit on the books and see where we can cut those taxes and look at how to grow the new businesses in Schaumburg.
Thank you, Mr. Daly.
So, just can I ask you to repeat that question, because I want to make sure I got that clear.
Absolutely. The village has benefited from a broad tax base of retail, businesses, and residents who have all chosen to locate here. As an interested partner in maintaining and growing all of these constituencies, what challenge do these segments face, and how would you suggest the village partner to address them?
Okay, so I'm breaking it into two parts. First one is, small businesses definitely are hurt here in the village. There is some regulation that does deserve to be looked at. We need to review that, and there's no doubt about that. When we talk about fees and taxes, quite frankly, that is what pays for all the services that the residents have in Schaumburg. That's why you have your good streets, it pays for your police, it pays for your fire. Your property tax is only 6% of your total bill. The rest are all coming from these fees. And there is a number of them. Food and beverage, hotel tax, those are just some of the ones that are out there that are in place to help pay for what we have in this village. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Stewart.
The two main challenges I feel like brick and mortar stores can face is obviously one that I touched on earlier, online sales, digging into those brick and mortar stores that can make their sales. So we do have to do more to support the mom and pop and the small businesses to be able to come into our community. The second part is, how do we do that? And we do that by allowing them and granting them better access. If those taxes need to stay in place for a revenue source, we can make and streamline the process so that their permitting and their time to open goes quicker. We need to look at the staff being needs of the village to determine whether we are doing that adequately. As raised in the previous forum for the trustees, there is quite a bit of delay faced by new businesses trying to open up in Schaumburg, and we need to do our best on the board and as village president to reduce that greatly. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question, we'll start with Mr. Daly. What are you willing to do to help the district's 54 schools that are currently overcrowded with class sizes of nearly 30 students?
Well, first of all, District 54 is a separate governmental body. They do their own taxation, they have their own board of directors, they have their own advisory groups. Quite frankly, the village doesn't have anything to do with them. Same thing for District 54, 211, District 54, the library, those are all separate governmental bodies. Certainly we can provide some services and talk to them about any joint ventures. We do that with the Park District. We have jointly ventured with them on a number of things, but from a taxing standpoint and from a use, we don't dictate to them and they don't dictate to us.
Thank you. Mr. Stewart.
Tom's fully right on about those being separate entities governmentally wise, but as the village president and the village board, we represent the residents who partake and participate in those schools. And so we need to not cut ourselves from those kinds of conversations. We need to be actively involved, as we have been, step it up if we need to get and encourage District 54 to work on reducing the class sizes, look at their facility needs and the facility supply to make sure that supply and demand is being met and not exceeded by the supply, or that the demand isn't exceeding the supply of what we have in teachers, and we need to just be as partnered with them as we can. I currently am an adjunct professor at Dominican University, a relatively new position for me, and know firsthand the rewards of teaching, but also know firsthand the intimidation factor that can come with an oversized classroom, and so would want to see those lowered for District 54. Thank you.
Mr. Rahman.
I agree with both candidates. In addition, I think we need to work hand in hand with schools and help them wherever they need help also. And that's the position that the president of village president needs to have for not only school but everybody. Give them a helping hand wherever it's needed. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question will start with Mr. Stewart. How frequently do you vote?
I have voted in, I think, every single election. I may have been sick or for a brief time I lived downtown to go to undergrad and law school, and I might have missed one off election, or primary, but I vote in primaries, general elections. This goes both in the April elections for the village as well as for the national elections in November. So I cannot think of off the top of my head one that I have missed recently. Avid voter and proud to wear the sticker when I do. So thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ramat.
Same thing with me. I have voted in every election. I was traveling in my past career, but I still did the early voting, over the weekend voting, whatever I could have done to vote my candidate. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Daly.
I voted in every elections for the last 34 years. That's both national, state, and local. So I'm there, vote.
Thank you. Next question will start with Mr. Rahman. What legislative priorities do you have for your first year in office if elected?
So I have, as my previous CEO experience, I have my 30, 60, 90-day plan that I look at. I look at our strategies moving forward, where we lag. Number one, how to reduce the debt in Schomburg before we do anything, and come up with strategies for that, and come up with the electronic charging stations in Schomburg. We need to have more and more of those to help our community better. 2025, we will see a huge shift in autonomous cars, and I don't think we are ready for that. So we need to do a lot of infrastructure building to secure all those fundings as well for the future. Thank you.
Mr. Daly.
So, excuse me, I know all the state legislators, and I think the biggest thing to do is talk with them and trying to get them to reduce the what I'll call the take that they are doing to the village. It's been mentioned in the past with the trustees. The state of Illinois has taken some of our sales tax dollars, and they want to take more. So there's a number of things that are going on behind the scenes that the state is looking at to fill their budget gap using our money. And I think we need to do what we can to encourage them not to. They may very well do what they want, but at least that is certainly a priority with them.
You can keep the microphone. We'll start with you again. Oh, I'm so sorry. My apologies. Thank you.
I'll give it right back, Tom. My legislative agenda would be twofold. One, lobbying the state to better represent villages such as Schaumburg, but also within Schaumburg, having a better fiscal stewardship approach to our own finances, as well as, I mentioned briefly before, the taxing of charging stations, the income equality issue, and enforcing a policy that sets that for the village and for those bidding on projects. And I would also want to look at ways to legislatively incentivize the repurposing of spaces such as the Dominics. I think that we could bring in temporary, we could help work with, it's a quagmire of an issue that's been discussed ad nauseum among us, but maybe not among the public. And I'd like to get into that a little more, but I have some innovative ideas for how to repurpose that and work with the real estate developers and owners of that land as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Daly. As the population ages and roads become more congested, it's difficult for folks to get around the community. What are your ideas to make transportation more accessible and user-friendly for all people who live in Schomburg?
Well, like it or not, we drive cars. We like our cars. I think there's some opportunity for us to work with the county in particular to try and get our lights timed. Don't understand why that's such a big deal, but the county is sometimes not as helpful in that regard. Schomburg Road was timed years ago, and the flow of traffic is much better. Now we need to get it on our other roads and help out there. So I think that will make a big deal in helping some of the traffic. There are things around the Woodfield area. We have a trolley that I don't think we use as effectively as we could, and would like to see that used better to help move people around the Woodfield area. A lot of businesses. We have about 75,000 residents, and we bloom to about 130,000 during the day because of the office. So if we can move them around without putting them back in cars, would be great.
Thank you. Mr. Stewart.
I know on social media there was much hubbub about the roundabout that went in on North Plum Grove Road. I actually am not opposed to those ideas and bringing in possibly more of those. I think they need to be looked at. That one was brought in responsibly and not, it's a one-lane roundabout, not a two-lane roundabout, so that made sense. I also have a brother-in-law who is a snowplow driver for a community, and I know firsthand that many people right now in this time of year complain about when's my road going to get plowed, but I also know that the drivers do what they can, and our public works are doing as much as they can. The trolley was mentioned before, and if it's not being used as much, we need to look at, it might not be a popular idea, but maybe that is an expense we could save and put funds into more plows, more ability to do, provide in the winter times. I know that is not something I'm saying we have to do, it's something we just have to look at. And so I think our roads are important, it's our biggest way of getting around and having communities come together, so they are an asset to our community.
Thank you, Mr. Ruff.
Mind repeating that question again, please?
Yes. As the population ages and roads become more congested, it's difficult for folks to get around in the community. What are your ideas to make transportation more accessible and user-friendly for all people who live in Schaumburg?
I think one thing Schomburg has done good is a dial-a-ride. I know from my parents, they have used dial-a-ride a lot in the trolleys. I think we need to look into additional bus services for the community, improve the train station where people can take trains rather than drive to the city, which congest all the main roads in the morning, and look into where else can we improve as far as bringing the efficiencies when people drive. The lights, Trustee Daly had said, that's a great idea also. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll start with Mr. Stewart. Have you served as a mentor, and how would you propose growing future leaders in a pipeline for young people, people of color, women, the LGBT community in local government?
Sure, I am proud to have served as a mentor and currently do so, mainly through my involvement with my John Marshall Law School Alumni Association and current law students looking to do the JD MBA route that I went through. I've mentored many on to become successful in that endeavor and am continuing to do so. I think that's an important area that I also am involved with a nonprofit called Resources for Community Living, and we help developmentally disabled adults who would otherwise slip through the cracks to find housing, get and keep jobs, save for their future, which is something disabled families often put off until the end. And so this community that we serve is a very diverse community. We help them and they pass that knowledge on and share their mentoring on down the road with other people. And so I do agree, one of my platforms is inclusion. And so I'm firmly for inclusion. In my younger days, I used to lead diversity programming. I can never speak highly enough of the need for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Rahman.
In my previous business, I have created a program where young college graduates join us and we mentor them for their future. I've worked with several non-for-profit, worked with them, bring those kids and train them, give them training, all kinds of training, and make sure they are good citizens moving forward. We've also worked with, Schomburg is a big, diverse group of people. We want to make sure we are inclusive, not only outside, but inside of the village hall as well. Bring diversity, which helps us make better decisions and stuff also. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Daly.
So in my younger years, I have two boys. In my younger years, I was involved in the YMCA's, used to be called Indian Guides, great father and son program. And so I was involved in that, helping teach them, just growing up and having the right morals. Also involved in Cub Scouts, Boy Scouts, going on camping trips, teaching them things, how to do things properly. So I'd like to think that I accomplished that well. I also try to get my two boys involved in cars. I have an old car, and I like working on cars. So one grew up to work on cars, and the other one decided to be a drummer. So I have no idea how that happened. But, you know, kids go their own ways. Anyway, I tried to be that, and to their friends, especially with the drummer. His friends would come over, and the band would get together, and because you don't move drum sets around. So they'd gather at the house, and I tried to coach and work with them.
Thank you. Our next question will start with Mr. Rahman. After the recent shooting in Aurora, what ideas do you have to work with the Schomburg police to ensure that anyone who should not have a gun does not have access to a gun?
Our 8th District Congressman Raja Krishnamurthy, I agree with what he's doing in Washington, D.C. We have to put a pause when a gun is purchased. We need to educate our kids with mental awareness in high school. We need to promote all that. We need to come up with seminars and have a gun control process in place in Schomburg, and teach our kids the mental awareness in high school rather than in college. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Daly.
So I'm going to give a big shout out to our school districts, District 54 and 211. I think they do a very good job. They're very aware. They have tough jobs. They're there in the room to teach our kids, and yet at the same time, they're also almost social workers. And that's a tough job. So they're trained to be very aware of what's going on and to look for signs of bad things. At the same time, the Village of Schaumburg has a police officer that's stationed in all the high schools and in a couple of the junior highs. So to try and work with kids and also help identify things that are going on. You know, I think they've done the best that they can, and I think we run programs where we try and work with them and do that as best we can.
Thank you. Mr. Stewart.
One area that we need to focus on, and I am firmly for the Second Amendment, but the well-regulated part needs to be focused on as well. And the police currently are a bit understaffed, so we need to fix that in this village, and then go door to door if we have to on people whose FOID cards have been revoked. That was the situation in this Aurora shooting, where a gentleman still had possession of guns after a FOID card was revoked. The police may not have had the manpower to go door to door to former FOID card members who have had revoked and find those guns and get after those and take them. Also, the schools was raised, and I think that to be a teacher in this day and age, you'd have to be a saint. But I've also seen the email communications that have come from Campanelli and Keller recently when they each had scares. And I think that the boards, as village president, I would want to work with the boards to be better communicating. There could have been more in those communiques than what was in the content of those messages to better communicate to the families.
Thank you. Our next question will start with Mr. Daly. How can we get better entertainment at Schomburg Fest?
Unfortunately, it costs money. We've worked over the years. Septemberfest, years ago when I first came on the board, was bleeding money like crazy. We were spending $150,000 a year to run Septemberfest. And we decided to change it up. It was bringing in some great acts, but it was costing money. So we changed it up, we increased some fees, and we tried for a break-even point every year. Doesn't always work. This last year was an absolute disaster with all the rain that we had and the storm, and it was just a mess. But I'd love to see more in there. The bands, this has become really popular, whether you know it or not. Outdoor venues, bands used to shy away from it. Now they want to be there. And so it costs more to do that, unfortunately.
Thank you. Mr. Stewart.
My birthday is September 3rd, and so I am very familiar with Septemberfest. When I was a kid growing up, that was my birthday party. My family gave me money and said, go have fun with your friends at the carnival and ride the rides and play the games. I think we don't have to just look at Septemberfest as an option to bring in better entertainment. I think we need to make even better use of our arts center that we have, the Larson Center, and It does put on great programming. I think it can put on better. As for Septemberfest, I missed the days of the 3 nights of fireworks. I get that there were budgetary reasons for that, though, and all about fiscal responsibility now as an adult. So the kid in me has to step aside for the adult that understands those ramifications. Does that mean we have to shy away from big ticket names that can be surprise acts someday down the road? Maybe we can look into it. Someday I want to wheel Aerosmith out there. I think we're going to have to wait a while until they're a little older, maybe. But in reality, though, I think we can do better with the resources we have throughout the year and not just limit ourselves to the one marquee event that we all love and hold dear. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Roman.
So Schomburg is a vibrant community. We have 20% Asians, we have 11% Hispanics, and 4% African American, and 54% Caucasians. We need to start focusing on bringing people from all the different communities and make Schaumburg look further vibrant, from the music to arts and cultures to everything else. I think we could do a lot better job when we become inclusive and bring other communities together instead of just going with one community and one phase. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll start our next question with Mr. Stewart. If elected, what opportunities do you see or challenges will you face in filling the shoes of such a long-serving leader?
Sure. I have a great deal of respect for our outgoing village president, Mayor, or as we lovingly call him, Mayor Larson, even though the title is technically a village president. I grew up knowing him at different events throughout the years, and I know those are big shoes to fill. I also know that I am currently the youngest person running, but that doesn't mean I'm not experienced in a way that qualifies me for the job. I'd like to point out that there are more than one path to earn the experience and the knowledge that it takes to bring to this position. To be able to read the boards that I currently do with the current boards I sit on, to know how to educate ourselves the best we can, to find the best decision to go forward and look ahead, not just for the temporary and current solution, but for down the road in the future. And so I plan to let my actions speak the loudest in proving that I'm eligible and able to step up into those shoes. I don't think they can be replaced, but I think eventually they can be filled. I have great respect for the experience of fellow candidates, and I think that mine needs to be considered as well as a choice. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Roman.
Mayor Larson leaving gives us an opportunity for reducing cost. I think when you work at a place for a long period of time and the cost automatically increases, you miss the opportunity for growth, you miss the opportunities for redundancies. We want to look at all the redundancies and clean the redundancies and bring diversity to the village. Our village, again, is 20% Asians, 11% Hispanics, 4% African American, and we have no diversity at the village level. So I think bringing that diversity will help us tremendously move our village forward.
Thank you. Mr. Daly.
So I helped Al get elected in 1987. I walked around, knocked on doors, and helped him through that. He became my mayor, he became my friend, and he is my mentor. I've worked with him ever since, and he has helped show me the way of how good government should work. There are some things this is the one area that I agree with my other candidates, is that diversity needs to be better. However, Schomburg does have some diversity. So we have more women in upper management positions than any other community around. At one point, we only had 2 directors that were male. Everybody else was a woman. You know, that's changed a little bit, but we need to do more, and certainly we need to have other cultures better represented. My next door neighbor, he happens to be Indian American. His daughter works in the HR department, and she's well aware. And
Thank you. Time now requires that we move to closing statements. Candidates, you will have 1 minute apiece, and we'll begin with Mr. Ramani.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm qualified to be your next village president because I will significantly reduce your municipal taxes, reduce unnecessary spending, embrace our community's diversity, establish residency program for the top employees, create opportunities and growth for small and medium-sized businesses, increase efficiencies throughout the village, improve customer service. We have some serious issues in Schaumburg with outrageous spending from $200 million to $252 million. Poor customer service. I've also looked into no-bid contracts, commercial real estate vacancies, fees and permits, which are 22% higher than the similar municipalities. You have an opportunity to change this, the way we do the business today, by electing my team and I for the next village president of Schaumburg. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Daly.
Thank you for taking the time to come here today to listen to what we have to say, and I hope I have earned your vote. I believe Schomburg is made up of more than just bricks and mortar, blacktop and concrete. It is made up of wonderful shops and restaurants and small businesses that serve our every need. It's made up of hardworking people, hardworking and dedicated people like yourselves, wanting to live in the finest community possible. Being mayor is about being a leader, and I have shown that I have been involved in local government over the last 30 years. I didn't just wake up one day and say I want to be mayor. I've learned how the village operates, and will use that experience to help Schaumburg continue to be the powerhouse it is. Schaumburg needs to have the kind of leadership that I represent, and that is being able to work with others to accomplish objectives. Schaumburg is in transition. With me as mayor, that transition will be transparent to residents and businesses alike. We have some exciting things happening in Schaumburg as we see the complete redevelopment of the Motorola property. I have the leadership, the time, and the experience to lead Schaumburg through this next decade. I love Schaumburg, and I want to be its next mayor, and I ask for your vote on April 2nd. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Stewart.
I'm running as a citizen candidate. I'm really just a neighbor that is going to take just as much care as you would put into this if you were elected yourself. But more so, I love Schaumburg. I think it is a great place, but I think it can always do better. I again remind you that I am the only one committed to keeping video gaming out of our community. I also feel that there are many paths to be qualified for this position, and democracy gives us that choice. So I'm proud to offer that to our fellow residents. I know I'm kind of the long shot here, but that doesn't mean I'm not equally capable or qualified to do this position. I now hope that residents, as they've been engaging with me so far, continue to do so, learn more about me and my candidacy, and I hope that on April 2nd or March 18th, if you early vote, that they'll elect me to be a good steward for Schaumburg. Thank you to the League of Women Voters for having us, and thank you so much to all of you for participating, for those watching online as well, for being engaged to citizens such as myself. Thank you again.
Thank you. As we bring the forum to a close, join me in thanking our candidates. Candidates are available to you if you have further questions. Be sure to vote on April 2nd or early vote.
Ladies and gentlemen, before you leave, I would like to remind you that there is another forum coming up on March 9th from 9:30 to 11 at the Palatine Public Library. This will feature your District 211 school board candidates.